Thank you. It's 5 o'clock. I think we'll bring this committee of the whole meeting to order for August the 14th. I'd like to acknowledge that Fort Nelson is in the traditional territory of the Fort Nelson First Nation as well as the Prophet River First Nation. We recognize the treaty and the rights inherent in our treaty. And we also celebrate the enduring presence of the Métis culture in our region as well. Please be advised that today's meeting is available to the public to attend virtually and is being streamed and recorded. Are there any additions to today's agenda? Council, any additions? And then, is there any public that would like to make a comment before we start? No? And on adoption of the agenda, everybody's okay with the agenda? It is good. Petitions. So we have the Bear Smart Community Status Update. Kim, would you like to take a seat? Okay, that's fine. Okay, it's just your name's first on the list. That's also. However you would like to take over the mics. The mics are yours, please.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Buttons on your right.
Well, how about a round of introductions first? I'm Rob Fraser. I'm the mayor. Councillor Dickey.
John Robert.
Barry Shield.
Anthony Eagles, Sergeant of the Northeast Zone of the Conservation Officer Service.
Jody Lee Seidel, Communications and Administration. Julie McIver, Corporate Manager.
Jeff Clinton, Eric Harbert, Conservation Officer, Fort Nelson.
Jimmy Klinsky, Wildsafe BC.
Lorraine Gerwing, Regional Counselor.
Please, gentlemen.
Sounds good. So we do have a presentation that we can bring up on the screen. Yep, that's the one. Perfect. So Eric and Jeff have prepared some statistics for us to take a look at. Something to keep in mind here is that we haven't hit our busy season yet in the year. So our stats do look rather low for this year as compared to like last year. We'll have that full entire fiscal year worth of statistics to demonstrate. So we don't know exactly what our fall looks like quite yet, but I'll have Eric and Jeff can run us through the statistics, and then we're open for a bit of discussion after. And then we're open for that open discussion with Kim after she does her presentation as well. And it's very much a team approach with WildSafe and COS. And a mutually shared outcome. So gentlemen, do you want to lead us through the stats?
Yeah. So as you can see, we're dating back to 2019. That's where we pulled the group of stats from. This is just kind of a total, give you an idea of the representation of the call volume coming into RAP specific to black bear complaints. So this is when somebody calls the 1877 number, the RAP number. This is where our stats are generated from. You can see there it's kind of consistent across the board, around 200, 180 calls a year. As Sergeant Eagles stated, our stats obviously right now are just low because we're just going into our bear season, busy bear season. This slide is just outlining sightings. Like I said, pretty consistent across the board from 2019 up to 2022. You can see that's kind of around the amount of sightings that we get. This essentially sightings. I don't know if we have access to the kind of the matrix that we've referred to in the past, but essentially if someone just sees a bear, a black bear specifically, and they call the RAP line, that's recorded as a sighting. So there's no attractants noted, no conflict noted, and it's recorded as a sighting only. Touch on that one.
Yeah, so kind of jumping into how it's broken up when a call is received by our dispatchers in or the call center in down south there, it'll kind of categorize it into different things based on behavior. And these are the categories you'll see here. So you see that the majority, some higher stats in the attractants with garbage. And then the non-applicable, obviously kind of ominous, but that'll be just for like if there's nothing going on, like the bear's just displaying normal bear behavior in an environment that is expected for bears to be there, it'll get lumped into that sighting category that we saw was about just under half of the statistics for each of the year pretty consistently. And so that kind of explains the big influx in that non-applicable end of the chart there. Every so often, you see we get pet food, barbecue, it's compost, like we'll get different kind of attractants listed, but Kim will probably touch on, or as you probably are aware of as well, the survey that has gone on kind of touched that as well. And we can speak more accurately than just this simple graph, but that kind of gives us a broad end spectrum of what kind of calls that we get in the community. After that, again, kind of another breakdown of it with the graph included there for reference. And hopefully you'll have access to this if you'd like to look afterwards at the data. If not, feel free to ask us. We can provide copies, no problem. Go to the next one after that. Pretty consistent over the years, last 5 years, as far as actions with wildlife. So we kind of touched on what kind of calls we were receiving, and now we're kind of moving into the presentation of the statistics of the outcomes of what we've done and intervention wise. Obviously, it doesn't speak to, our stats won't speak to the number of hours, the number of other kind of efforts that we'll do for preventative measures, but this is to touch on some of the outcomes. So around that 4 to 2 range is how many bears are destroyed in the community, which is extraordinarily low compared to other communities for good reason. Last year, we were able to translocate that family unit out of town, which seems to be successful as of late. I mean, it's made an appearance around town, but not as often as much as in town as it was last year. So that's really, really positive. And then, there's just a difference between translocated versus short distance relocated. Short distance is going to be within its kind of home range, not kind of a complete plopping of somewhere completely different. And the translocation is trying more of a further away distance relocation, so it kind of deters that effort of the bear to return back to where it was, and hopefully encourage it to occupy another kind of environment as its home range.
I guess we should mention that these stats are just Fort Nelson as a whole. It's not the outlying communities, right? We still look after other communities up towards Fireside and Trutch. And I think that's a lot.
Yeah, for sure. So we're obviously a bit of background. I understand. Like, this is my first presentation to council. I came over from Mackenzie District in September 2022. So a bit of background: provincial law enforcement agency. So these gentlemen's area of responsibility is the North Peace Zone. So they are not tied to the Fort Nelson, the community of Fort Nelson. They reside here. However, from Trutch north to the Northwest Territories borders, if there's a bear issue, that's where their responsibility is. The primary responses that we provide are significant public safety risk. That's always reigns number one and dictates our responses, as well as significant property damage should a bear enter a home or something like that. Obviously, very concerning behavior that would prompt a response from our end. So it's great that Fort Nelson does have a working bylaw that's been used in the past to enforce attractants, and I think that that's something that should be elaborated on, especially in the bear working group. And I think that Kim will likely get into it a little bit about the discussions, and just to brief everyone on, the topics that are shared. And, there's a couple general themes that we see coming through is the municipality does have the responsibility and the also the ability in this community, which is awesome, to have bylaws enforced to deal with attractants, whether that be those top two attractants noted, garbage and fruit trees. That's both, I believe, covered under the Fort Nelson bylaws. And that is the town, working to protect public safety by getting ahead of bear conflict and dealing with the attractants that are inevitably bringing these bears into the community. So, even from where I sit in Fort St. John, I see a lot of these calls coming in, and there's a genuine fear for public safety in the community. I've sensed that being even half a bear season into this. Last year, we were bringing staff in from Fort St. John to cover off, just so that these guys could get out and do their core work, which is fish and wildlife enforcement. Public safety and human wildlife conflict play a large role in our jobs, of course. But the amount of time and effort that goes into keeping the public safe. You've seen that there's only 2 to 4 bears killed per year in Fort Nelson. So that is a number that is, for a town similar to this. When I was working in Mackenzie, we were 7 to 14 bear a year in an exactly same attractant garbage can model. So this town does not see the number of bears that get killed per year based off of attractants. That being said, the calls in comparison, we get just as many calls as a district like Mackenzie would. And this town has the ability, what I'm getting at, to enforce their own bylaws, to take ownership over the waste management aspect, which would inevitably make the community feel way safer, and also cut these conflict issues off right at the top, which is that garbage and the fruit trees on things like the community trail and stuff, bringing those bears into the community. So this is a really, really nice picture of, there's a little bit of work that needs to be done, but the end goal for this community could be incredibly positive if the time, the effort, and some funding were to be put forward in the bylaw realm, as well as also securing the attractants through a bear resistant garbage can program or something to that effect. So that really concludes the formal slideshow side of, I think, what we had discussed wanting to talk about. And we can definitely get into more of what the bear working group is getting into, is working with, and the discussions that are being had following Kim's presentation, if that's agreeable with council.
I'm good with that. Take it away, Kim. What?
So most of you know me, I'm Kim, Community Program Coordinator for WildSafe BC. I'm going to breeze through these really quickly, maybe hold the questions till the end so I can get through them. I have a fair few slides, but they're fast slides, I promise. This has come up a couple of times, I've been asked, but anyway, WildSafe BC used to be Bear Aware. We're one and the same. So if anybody asks you what happened to Bear Aware, we turned into WildSafe BC. So we are the provincial leaders in preventing conflict with wildlife through collaboration, education, and community solutions. A slide you've seen before, as is the next one, but I love this one. So this one just goes on to, basically tell us that, what, we coexist with bears. We have coexisted with bears, and we're going to continue to coexist with bears because we are where we are. We're surrounded by their natural habitat. And as long as that bear is moving through a community, it is not interacting, and there's no conflict with people or property, that's a good thing. And ultimately, that's what we're trying to achieve. It's when those bears stop, when they stop, they find human provided foods. They can become food conditioned. And once the bear starts equating humans with food, they lose that natural wariness that they have, and they become habituated. And that is when things change a little bit, and it gets a little bit more dangerous. There's things that we can do to prevent that, and we're well on our way of starting and hopefully finishing that. Go ahead, Jaylene. So what do? I do door-to-door outreach. I do wild safe ranger presentations for school-age children. I've done a lot of them this year. Children scare me. I won't lie, they scare me. And I used to do most of the programs with the adults, but now I'm targeting the kids because I'm hoping the kids take the message home to the parents. So I'm getting more comfortable with little kids. Wild safe awareness safety presentations with adults, bear spray workshops with adults. We've set up booths at community gatherings and events. I do bin tagging, not nearly as much this year as we have in the past. And when I have time, I work with the Wild Safe Business Pledge, and not so much in the Bear Campsite program, but I'm hoping to get there soon. So since 2018, we've tagged 1,390 garbage bins. I have visited 376 people on their doorsteps. I've left another 763 residents information on your bylaw and a whole bunch of other stuff that I leave. We've done 31 presentations, attended 30 events, administered 15 Wild Safe Ranger programs. And with all of the above, that's about 2,409 people, but we've engaged proactively in one way or another with probably close to over 3,000, because we get phone calls, Facebook messages, private messages, emails. None of that is included in there. For all of those stats, any one of those annual reports on the bottom, which I hope you've all read, can give you that information in greater detail as well. So I'm not going to talk about black bear numbers and stuff. The COs just did this, but what these charts are just the bin tagging statistics. The left-hand side is too early, right-hand side is too late, and then we go east and west side, just depending. I can't really see which is which, but you can see that they're going down relatively. The garbage being put out too soon is very down. We've got fairly good compliance with that. Fairly good compliance as the years progress with bins being left out overnight. 2021, we didn't do any garbage tagging, or not very much on the overnight or the out too late. We paid for that dearly in 2022 because the numbers all spiked again. Basically, people went, when there was nobody out there stickering their bin, they reverted back to their old habits. So they know better. They just choose for whatever reason to do what they want to do. Go ahead, Jay. So joint initiative between the CO Service, Wild Safe BC, and one volunteer in 2021. We started the Fort Nelson Food Bank fruit cleaning project, and the Fort Nelson Friendship Center took it over last year and are working on it this year. Basically, if you have an abundance of fruit that you can't pick, they will match people that are looking for fruit and send them to your property, or vice versa, so that we don't have any wasted fruit. We don't have the fruit on the trees there for the bears to get. Some of it makes its way into the food bank. My tree's been picked clean. I didn't do a thing. Just watch them come and go, and that was through this program. So it works very, very well. So the municipality, in terms of getting to where we want to go, has done a significant amount of work, and you guys should be commended on the work that you have done to date. You have completed, or had us complete a bear hazard assessment, as well as the human bear conflict management plan. Summed up, the BHA tells us what needs to be done in what areas, and the HBCMP tells us how to do that. In the bear hazard assessment, these two maps are in there. They're important, and I still use them today. The wildlife corridors were identified in the bear hazard assessment by myself, by Jeff, and just by historical data. Interestingly enough, in 2000, and it's not just us, it's a lot of communities, when we put in our beautiful winding community trail through the forest, what we didn't expect is for it to become like a freeway to wildlife, and it kind of has a little bit. And we have a lot of entrance and exit points on our community trail, and they're coming in there. So I don't know what the answer is to that, but if you look at the yellow area, it does almost mirror our community trail on those sides of towns. The other side is where we identified hotspots based on community gardens, municipal fruit trees, public municipally owned public garbage cans, And so the bright ones that look like fire that we see now on BCTV, those are actually hot spots and those are relatively the same today as they were back then. And those are the areas that I usually try and concentrate our focus on, the door-to-door and bin tagging. Go ahead, Jay. So why are we doing all this? There was a desire, and I hope there is still a desire to become a Bear Smart community. This program is run by the Ministry of Environment Climate Strategy in partnership with the BCCF as well as the UBCM. It's voluntary, and it's just addressing the root cause of human-bear conflicts, thereby reducing the risks to human safety and private property, as well as it certainly decreases the number of bears that are being destroyed each year. Go ahead, Jay. So true story, 60% of the communities that do have the community smart, Bear Smart community status, there are 60% fewer calls with attractants. Next one. So there are six criteria to becoming a Bear Smart community. And, you guys are very much on your way. You had in 2020, the Bear Hazard Assessment was completed. In 2022, the conflict management plan was completed. Right now, for consideration is revising your planning and decision-making documents, such as your OCP, your zoning bylaw, things like that. That's for consideration. Your ongoing education program still continues today from 2008 to present, 2018, sorry. Develop and continue to maintain your bear-resistant solid waste management plan. That's still in progress. And then implement or revise our Bear Smart bylaw. You have a fairly strong bylaw that was established in 2009. It just needs to be enforced. And so that's kind of where you're at in terms of the 6 criteria. So I would say you're probably more than halfway there. Go ahead, next slide. Bin tagging is an educational activity. We go out on collection day, Tuesdays and Thursdays. Usually between 10 and 12 p.m. at night, looking for bins that have been put on the road too early, that are full. If they are, they get a sticker like this and an information packet stuck on the top of it now as well. And then we also this year, we either go out between 10 and 12 the fall that same day, collection day. But this year we've actually been going out more in the morning and just tagging the ones that are out overnight, which are, just as much of a problem. They're empty, but the visual cue or whatever is still there. We're not doing as much of that this year. The next slide, Jay. This, I'm not going to read it because you guys have got all this in your brochures I see there. This is the importance of why we shouldn't be putting our garbage, compost, and other attractions out early. Everybody read this, right? We can just skip through it. Excellent. Garbage collection day, green is Tuesday, red is Thursday. That's your own town map. Your bylaw basically says your garbage can't go out prior to 5 a.m. and has to be off the curb by 7. Garbage on Airport Road West, garbage set out on the curb prior to 5 a.m. Compliance is good. Garbage still on the curb after 7, again, compliance is still good. Airport Road East, no sooner did I submit this slide presentation to Jaylene. Thursday was a bad day on the lower part of town. But nonetheless, for the most part, compliance is pretty good on having the garbage out too early. But we do have some room for improvement on garbage cans that are left out too late and even overnight. Go ahead. There's the condensed version, I guess, of your bylaw. It's fairly strong. I don't have to read that. You're all familiar with it. Go ahead. So, compliance is good too early. Compliance is good too late. But where we're falling down right now is the storage of those garbage bins. As per your existing bylaw. We see, just drive around any day, any time, any month, any time of the year. You're going to find garbage cans literally leaned up against their garage door, leaned up against the shed door, sitting right beside their front door on the steps. And I don't buy the excuse that we don't have a method of storage, because I have gone around and there's less than 5% of the people don't have a garage or a shed where that garbage should be put, out of sight, out of mind. So that's where I think the biggest issue is moving forward. We're going to have to, have a look at that bylaw, enforce that bylaw, and get these bins where they're supposed to be, and not in an area where they're easily accessible by black bears, which is what we're seeing now. Once they get in one on a road, they will go down that street and they will seek them out. They'll go up to them. They'll do a quick sniff. They don't get anything, they keep going. But if there's any catch of anything, they'll knock it over. If there's nothing in it, it's just a bin, smelly bin, they'll move on. I've watched it time and time again. So right now, the Human Bear Conflict Management Plan Working Group includes myself, staff from the NRM, Fort Nelson First Nation, and the CO service. As per one of the recommendations in the Bear Management Plan, we are now currently looking for 2 community members to round that out and give us a more broader spectrum, and balance it out a bit. So I think that closes. There's been ads on Facebook. I haven't seen the newspaper. That does close August 31st. If you do know of somebody who, who's got a keen interest here, or whatever, and certainly wants to be part of the, be proactive and want to help fix this, then by all means have them fill out the form. And we should have somebody in place, hopefully by the mid-September, I hope. So what's next? I'm hoping, I'll call it more of an information center as opposed to the community meeting. Community meeting, people envision sitting at the theater and having everybody in the seats, and that's not what I envision at all. I envision something very similar to the awesome process in which you guys do your budget consultations, where everybody kind of has a spot. We kind of set up our booths, people come in, they ask the questions and they go. One more slide, Jay. So, why we should do that, because I think our survey has kind of told us that people don't understand. They have no idea what the municipality is doing and has done the past, decade or even 2 decades. They have no idea the hard work the COs are putting in, the time and effort that I put in, and how that all works together. And so I think the stakeholders' shared responsibility is unclear. It's not defined, and it needs to be defined to residents. You need residents buy-in to move any further now in this program. They need to know what the CO is doing, what the municipality is doing, what I'm doing, what are their responsibilities? Most of them know, but we need to, revisit that and reiterate that. How does it all tie in together? And what is the overall objective that we hope to achieve? We have a community based on that survey that is kind of 50-50 split. 50 people, are okay with bears in the community. 50% aren't. 50%, support a bear smart community. 50% don't know what it is. I had hoped that the survey was going to come out maybe higher on one side or the other and make it a little bit clearer in direction. I'm not sure why, wishful thinking, but it didn't. It almost makes it harder now knowing we have a community that's split. That's it for me in a nutshell.
Okay. Well, thank you. for
Short
that
and sweet, I
presentation.
promised.
And thank you for the work that all of you are doing to keep the community safe. Are there any questions, comments?
I'm wondering how the stats compare to our recycle program, our green waste management program, like how much waste is going into the worm farm and how much reduction in just garbage is actually happening. Because when I drive by and I see these huge garbage cans full, to me, it doesn't seem like that recycle green waste management program is working. So I think it'd be interesting to see if when the green waste management system came into play, did the bear complaints get reduced, or are they just the same? Because I think we're pretty generous on the size of garbage we're allowing each house to fill.
Ariana was very good in working with both myself and the CO service, even to the point of helping her determine which bins that she should use and give to her customers to put out, because she certainly didn't want to make anything, any situation worse. Her bins are on and off the street so quickly, like much faster than our residential garbage pickup. I don't think, and the COs can correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think we've seen a change one way or the other with those being, on the street. What I can say, when it's a long time off and it's encouraging, is that with our vermicomposting and with Ariana and with the Bear, the Bear Smart Community Program and everything that we're doing, this community has the potential to have like zero waste. And, it's not that far off. And wouldn't that be cool for us to be on global television for something good for a change and not something, not something negative? And something like this is a way to do that, but we're headed in that direction. But no, I don't think there's been any change at all, Leslie.
I just need to, if I may, the organic diversion program right now is a drop in the bucket. Like there isn't enough waste being diverted to make any correlation between Bears activity in the community and that. There is just not enough people participating. There just isn't. And we have to remember too that there is a company picking up the waste, but there are homes that are divert and businesses that are just taking it themselves, right? So
Yep.
Until we have more people, which is the EAC is working on a couple of projects to try to increase that diversion program. But again, you have to be really careful in how all that's being stored as well.
Go ahead.
Do you guys remember when the landfill didn't have a fence around it? And you could go down there any time of the day and see 40 bears down there just lounging around eating garbage. And then we put the fence up, so now they can't get to the garbage, so they're coming in the community. Do you remember that?
What happened to those?
Are there any other comments?
Yes, I have a couple of them. First of all, just from a reporting point of view, I appreciate that this is focused. This report actually should be a Fort Nelson report, because when you start talking about the Northern Rockies, then I immediately go to what it really is. So I know that you mentioned the outlying communities of Toad River and Prophet River and actually up highway further yet. Most of those communities are inside of our municipality, and they need to show up in the report. Any of the interaction, the bear interaction there, because we're the representatives for the people in those communities, since that they are our municipal residents. And that's the first thing. So from an operational point of view and what the report contains and what you've been seeing, it's fabulous. I think the work is very good. It's going in the right direction. There's just make a comment about some of the differences between Mackenzie and Fort Nelson. Mackenzie's primarily a conifer forest primarily, and it has lots of the blueberry types of berries. It has lots of the earlier ripening berries, the huckleberries all over the hills. It's wonderful. If you're into huckleberry pie, it's a better place to be than here. But we have this wonderful ecology here from a high bush cranberry crop that is a lot of what happens in our late season interaction with bears in the community is dependent on whether we have a good cranberry year out in the forests around us. When we have a good cranberry year, we have very little interaction. And when we have a drought year like this, where there's almost no cranberries, so look out, next week this could all start a little bit more intense. When we have no cranberries, of course, the attractants internally in the community could be more attractive. I wanted to use that as a bridge to just say that I believe that one of the solutions to the attractants in town is to create attractants on a larger scale that are outside of town, because the attractants, the late fruit trees, the late things like that are as big of an issue from an attractant point of view as not quite as big as the garbage. The stats show it's not quite as big of an attractant, but we can actually tailor some, because we're a regional municipality, we don't have to stay within exactly the bounds of this map to affect this problem that we're having. We should be free to talk about planting some late season apple trees and chokecherries and various things like that, so that they become attractants farther out of the community, because that nature itself, the cranberry story itself, is proving that that is a viable method of reducing bear conflicts in attractants inside of our own.
That's a good one.
Yeah, I just like to get some further information, and maybe that's not available for this meeting, but when you made reference to a community such as ours, and the number of bears that unfortunately have had to be dispatched, compared to Mackenzie, just wondering like what situations would make it so that in Mackenzie there was 14 bears that were dispatched as compared to 2 here. Wondering if perhaps there's just less tolerance in Mackenzie, because I think that 50% of the people surveyed could probably have been happier if there was more than 2 bears that were maybe not dispatched, but were removed from our community.
So that 14 bear year was the year that, you know, they switched from resident supplied garbage can to the automated garbage service. So that showed that there was a direct, these unsecure commercial cans and that association to the standard looking garbage can, given the size and the inability to securely store some of these garbage cans. That was a spike that we saw. You know, the tolerances and all of this, the COS operates under, we call them, well, they're human wildlife conflict guidelines. So we have a standardized way of dealing with these. So, you know, tolerance wise and such, you know, the tolerance wise, it's uniform across the province in the way that public safety is assessed, right? So I wouldn't say that there's a difference in tolerance. I would say that, you know, that automated garbage service, when it was brought in, definitely we saw that spike. But, you know, what I'm saying out of you know, providing just a little bit of outsider perspective, being that I'm new here, is, you know, there is in general low conflict within this community, and it's not going to take a lot of work, i.e. a bylaw position, you know, to diversify that, having a dedicated bylaw position would not only help in addressing all of those, you know, the garbages that are out early, because that, you know, that's part of the Wild Safe program, is having an effective and enforceable bylaw. So dealing with that, but also, you know, that one position would be able to deal with so much else, whether it's an unsightly property or any of those tools, thereby spreading the load off of, you know, I understand the fire chiefs, Sean O'Shaughnessy is responsible for delivering the bylaw program in town, but having that dedicated position that, you know, we can work in tandem with and share that load in a way, we would take the higher end calls. And then if it's just simply a garbage can that's left out, that gets diverted and that goes and it's dealt with by the municipality, right? So I hope that answers your question, but that's one way. And then what Kim is saying, is coming up with a standard secure garbage can. If the municipality also provides, you know, a secured garbage can that a bear can't get into, then residents have zero excuse as to why, if they're being provided everything they need to, then if they fail to secure their attractants, then that role is solely on the resident versus the municipality having a part to play in all of this human wildlife conflict.
One of the things that I'll say it feels like a failure, maybe on my part, maybe not, but whatever. What we're finding is, you know, even at these things that we attend, is people are storing their garbage in those garbage carts. Okay, fair enough. But, you know, the not really supposed to do that. I mean, you know, the garbage is supposed to be secure, whether that be in your garage or your shed. I don't care if it's in your bin or not, but if your bin is sitting outside, it should be empty, but it's not. So on Tuesday, the garbage guy, you know, if you live down on the lower part of Gardner, you know, the garbage guy comes by about 2 o'clock. Well, you know, a mom with 2 kids in diapers, she's already put another bag of garbage in that, you know, as soon as she brings it off the street, she's put another bag of garbage in there. That's now going to stay there for another week, right? So trying to get that education piece out there that, you know what, put it in your or put it in your garage, put it in your shed, my God, freeze it, do whatever you need to do. But what we don't want, you know, bears have an excellent sense of smell. And I've got, you know, one property, and I'm not going to mention where, but one property where this particular person has moved all over town, and every year it's the same thing on Facebook. Oh, a bear got into my garbage. Oh, a bear got into my garbage. It doesn't matter where she lives, the bear is getting into her garbage. So she could live all over, you know, all over town, in different areas of town, but until she changes the way she's storing her garbage, you know, a bear is going to continue to get in it. And once he's been in it once, he's going to keep going back until he stops getting that food reward. And that is what we're facing right now. They're coming back over and over and over again. Me, if a bear got into my garbage one time, I'd change the way I was storing it, right? But that doesn't seem to be happening in all cases.
Go ahead.
Just a question about the statistics. There seem to be some people that have very low conflicts, and then there's people that have the same conflicts over and over again, as you just stated. When the statistics are put together, is there a distinction between repeat callers, or are they just counted as one every time they call?
So
If it's the same person with the same bear and they call 5 times, is that 5?
So
on
with
your-
me, I don't do any enforcement or anything, right? I am strictly education. Right now, they're actually getting 2 chances. They shouldn't, but I'm giving them the benefit. I'm trying to be nice, right? I give them 2 chances. If they do it a 3rd time, then I send an email to that bylaws@northernrockies.ca, and I let either Hayward or James, deal with it, right? And in my stats at the end of the year, if you remember that chart I have, there's yellow, which is twice, and the red that's 3 times or more. So I do track it, but those are my stats. They don't go anywhere special, right? Like maybe theirs does.
For sure. So yeah, just from the stats that the Conservation Officer Service presented, those are each individual caller. The way that our stat tracking system tracks these is a one by one. So at this point in time, delineating those 2 stats without looking at the details of every single call, I wouldn't be able to provide that to you right now.
Go ahead. Just a follow-up question for staff. Did our bear resistant garbage locks, did that ever get off the ground? Are people using them? Did they not work? What's the update on that?
So there's community members that are using them. We didn't get the uptake that we thought we would when we reached out, but we've also, for lack of better words, I shouldn't say not knocked on doors, but we did suggest to some, we knocked on doors, okay, that some community members use them because of their inability to store their garbage, or they didn't have a place to store their garbage inside the bin inside with garbage in it. So there are members who are using it. And as the report suggests too, that's following this discussion, there's some opportunity to increase the number of bins out there based on a as needed.
So
Does
those
that make a
bins are
difference?
acting as a deterrent only right now. So just so you know, there have been at least 2 occasions where if a bear has wanted to get into them bad enough, he has been able to access those bins very early. So you may want to look at a change in design. Right now, they're able to get their claws underneath the lid and where the metal brace is. And then they just, and once they pop one, it's just very easy to pop the other. I'm not saying they're not working because they have acted as a deterrent, but they also have to be locked. So I see numerous cases where they're sitting by the garage, by the shed, by the front door, and they're open, right? So that's, if there's garbage in there, that's not helpful.
I just have one more question on stats. So when you have 233 complaints and 89 sightings, but only had to deal with 3 bears in, say, 2022. So when you have 233 complaints, how much time is that of yours? Or is it just the 3 bears that were put down or relocated? Because the reason I'm asking is if you're wasting, well, not wasting, but spending so much time reviewing all of these complaints, would it not be easier to have a bylaw officer enforcing the bylaw. Because I really strongly believe that if we have a bylaw, it should either be enforced, amended, or out the door.
Yeah, it's a really good question. So like what we can share is our experience, obviously, and how these things go. So how it'll go is we'll receive a call from our call center, and it's just a short little blurb here. And often what that involves, with very few exceptions, we try to interact with the call taker. Even if it's an FYI or something, just out of respect for the community member, right? And a lot of people just show genuine concerns, and so we can provide education over the phone. These conversations can be, anyway from 2 minutes or upwards of half hour, depending who wants to talk, and rightfully so. We all have our different opinions and things like this, and so. But like I said, out of respect for the community, we like to follow up with each one of them. That's distributed between the two of us, and like Sergeant Eagles mentioned as well, we're part of a larger zone, and so if we're up highway, like you say, doing compliance and enforcement work, the other 80% of our job, the folks from down south will be able to field some of those calls as well. But to address what you're saying about, like, as far as time investment into these things, it is pretty time taxing on us. We're very fortunate here, like you say, to have a relatively low call volume, in the sense that we can field a lot of them ourselves. But that's just it. A lot of it is it's just that is education. How can we help facilitate you to store your garbage better? How can we? And this is really the long-term solution name of the game, right? As we all know, like it's clear as day that the preventative type measures are the ones that are going to be lasting. As Kim so accurately put, the bears aren't going anywhere. It'll be a continuous cycle of them, and that's how it is. So that aim of coexistence really begins there, and so that's what a lot of those phone calls look like day to day. And as you mentioned, the bylaws that we do have, they're actually really incredible. A little background for myself: I've just been here just under a year. And my background was coming from the South Coast, where I was servicing three different Bear Smart communities and a few that were pursuing Bear Smart communities. So that was Whistler, Squamish, Lions Bay, and North Vancouver was the one pursuing their Bear Smart status. And each of them had their own bylaws, their own bylaw crews. And again, I can't speak for anybody on behalf of anybody, but just through my experience working with them, just like you're saying, the majority of the things that fell under their solid waste bylaws, they just had a small army of very enthusiastic bylaw guys and girls that loved doing that work, and they were out all the time. North Vancouver, and I encourage you to look it up online. I'm sure it's open source as well, but what they ended up doing was they scrapped their entire solid waste bylaw and revamped it. And so not only did they have a crew, but a new and improved type bylaw. And honestly, here what we have in this community is pretty similar. It's actually pretty impressive. But we would it's like Anthony said, it's not that we would be taking a step back from this role. It would be a collaboration with the community and working with the bylaw crew. So that could look like joint patrols in the springtime, working together in that capacity where our mandates overlap. And that's how it was done in practice, like you say, in those other Bear Smart communities that I had the privilege of servicing down south as well. But to make a short answer of a long answer here, it is pretty time consuming to field these calls, and we do them as efficiently as we can. But our main role, our unique role, what bylaw, where it exceeds the bylaw, is that Wildlife Act type enforcement, more provincial legislation. And then as well, instead of managing the site, managing the wildlife is where we step in. And that's obviously going to be where there's a larger concern for public safety. So hopefully that answered what you're asking.
Just to go back to your stats, and I think you probably know this because I always say that, is it says 233 calls. That's not individual bears, and I'm sure you realize that it may be 3 bears being called in 10 times each or whatever. So to base anything, I was just talking to a counselor she's from Chetwynd, and we had that conversation, and she said, "Oh, I thought you guys were overrun with bears." And I said, "No, but when you look at Facebook, yes, it's a Bearmageddon. It's crazy." But I said, it's 3 bears causing all those problems. We're not overrun with bears. She said, oh, well, now that I know that, she said, I'll probably pay a little bit more attention. But that's the other thing is we see so many postings and Facebook. I mean, I love Facebook for the fact that if you're out walking, you have a very good idea, general area, there's a bear in that area. But when it keeps getting posted over and over and over and over again, every day, every night, it does look like there's a Bearmageddon and that there's bears everywhere. And that just is not, you've seen it, you've seen the stats. That's just not the case. I'm out there every night. I haven't seen a bear in town all year. Honestly, not once.
Me then.
Yeah. Go
I just feel the need to respond. There are a segment of the population that are done phone.
Yeah.
We're just done phone. We just don't phone anymore because there is no point to put that stat on the map or the whatever. So I just feel that it's important that and I'm sure you all know that there are some of us that no longer phone it in. We
My
see them,
message-
we experience them.
Yeah.
Whether it's last Sunday or last Saturday noon on 42nd Street, there was a bear. So people are just done. So the stats aren't a true reflective of anything really, because some people are not calling, and then you're right, you get 10 calls about the same bear. And if the bear isn't moving along, then that, is makes the problem look even worse, right? Because it's in the community for a couple of weeks or a couple of months or whatever it happens to be. So I think stats are important, but we need to remember that they're not.
Yeah, we have to take them with a grain of salt, right?
Yeah.
Because there's so many different factors. The other side of that is, yes, we dealt with 233 bear calls, but really how many of them, like the sightings, if there's a bear sighting generally, unless there's a mitigating factor or it's a sighting of a habituated bear that's presenting a public safety risk, we'll call the complainant back. That incurs time for field officers. And then also still we have to write up a report, no different than any police file. But, yes, how many do we actually have to, start the tracking and start moving towards? That is not captured in the statistics. The sightings, those 89 sightings would be encapsulated within all of our bear calls. So those ones generally, sighting won't denote a response. Each of them still does take time. We try to review them. But yeah, which ones actually denote a response and which don't, it's not, and to what degree. If we're translocating a bear, when they translocated that family unit, they were out almost, both of them were gone almost a day, right? If we're even dispatching a bear, that's a minimum 3 hours by the time that we safely discharge a firearm and deal with the entire situation. So yeah, so it really depends on the calls. The concrete calls or the concrete stats we have is number of bears that were dispatched within the community and the outcomes. The other concrete one that we have is that visual of the attractants, and the attractants that if we target those fruit trees in the garbage, that is our solution. And that would be, if those two things are controlled, which are already under the NRM bylaw, if that were to be controlled, then we would see a decrease in bear conflict in the community. The other side of that is public education, 100%. And going back, there was a time, I understand, in Fort Nelson where, calling in every single bear call or every single bear sighting might have been, the way that things may have been communicated. I wasn't working for the COS 10 years ago. What I can say now is where we're interested is, sure, yeah, a call or sighting, helps. The key information we need to know is if that bear, from the COS perspective, is a public safety risk. If it's showing aggressive or threatening behavior, if it's accessing an attractant, that's where we need to become involved. Aside from that, a bear in the community is a bear in the community. We, this is their backyard, no different than anywhere else in British Columbia. Bears are going to be in our community. They're part of our lives and we live with them every day. So yeah, I totally understand if you're not calling in every single site.
I got to stop you there. This is a civilized community that's developed. Bears do not belong in civilized communities that are developed. You said that these attractants are bringing these bears to the community. I disagree with that. The attractants are keeping them in the community. These bears are coming to the community, they're passing through the community. I want to know, what's the end game? If all the garbage cans in our community and all the fruit trees were cut down and we become a bear safe community, are you going to act any differently as a CO service when there's a bear in the community? What's the end game for the CO service when it comes to bears in this community? Because when people are walking on that trail, they don't know whether it's a first time bear or whether it's a bear that's been habituated, whether it's a bear that's going to eat them or their dog. They don't know the difference. They just want to be safe in their community. And so I don't understand. We've done all of this work and good work. You've done good work and the education work is good, but the statistics are not changing. Relatively speaking, these statistics are not changing. They're flat. So with all the work we're doing, and I agree, there's many people that just given up on giving a call because they don't feel they're getting the service that they deserve from you guys. I'm being told that all the time. And it's coming in to bears. Last night, there was a bear in a tree in my brother-in-law's place, eating apples that haven't even ripened yet. So we can't say they've fallen on the ground. It's an apple tree. So tell me a community in the province that has eliminated attractants.
There isn't.
There isn't.
The key here is to minimize it. And where we're coming from is number one, public safety. We do not want to have an incident. I fully understand that there was a fatal bear attack at Liard 25 years ago. And, there was a bear attack on the Shoshone last year. I completely agree that we're never gonna, bears are part of this community and we are not gonna be keeping them out. And I agree that them hanging around here for prolonged periods of time is not ideal. And I agree that the goal here is to minimize their access to attractants, because once they make that association to humans and to human food, that is where we get a public safety risk. This town, there is a genuine, the perception of bears in the community is that they're dangerous animals, which they can be, but they, if we prevent that association to garbage and to fruit, ideally, to garbage primarily, then we are, number one, not encouraging them to stay, and they aren't associating, humans with that waste and that food. So by doing what we're doing right now, we're minimizing that association, which in turn is going to help keep the bears, more wild, more and less inclined to stay in the community. They're going to pass through. It's a developed community, I understand that, but it's surrounded by muskeg and spruce country, right? These bears are going to be here. And the other side of this is, humans and human negligence in dealing with attractants, and us shooting bears just because, they're eating garbage that someone forgot to lock up. It's not acceptable anymore. That's not how we operate. We operate under a risk to public safety. But just shooting bears because people are, an unfenced dump, for instance, or something like that. There was a time when it was societally acceptable to have bear viewing platforms at a dump, but now look at all of these communities that have fenced this in the manner of public safety and to prevent us from having to kill wildlife just because of human waste and human negligence and failing to secure that attract.
Are we out of time?
Yes.
Okay. That's unfortunate.
Council, you want to extend another 15 minutes or so? We've got 6:30 before we have to get into the regular meeting.
Jayden, can you
So,
bring up my presentation again where there were those two aerial photographs of Fort Nelson?
While she's looking for that, I just want to say that I think it's
Stop it
really necessary for everybody to understand what everybody else's rules and responsibilities are. Like the COS service has, and Kim has worked so hard, and I think we all agree that, and I don't think that anybody is blaming the continuous bear activity in our community on the COS service. Like, I certainly am not. You all have a job to do and you have a boss that tells you how you got to do that job. As elected officials, we represent our community. And if our community is saying this is what they want, then it's our job to figure out how we get to what we want, working within the parameters outlined by the province. And I think what's got us in a conflict situation is, I'll just speak for myself, my previous expectation that the COS service could operate based on what this community wants. And I'm now coming to realize that that is not going to be the reality, that there's a disconnect between the two. And as elected officials, I believe we need to figure out how to move forward with that disconnect.
So,
Go ahead. Please.
So I think in some respect, we've done that to ourselves because for a long time, we wanted every single bear sighting reported. We asked the community to do that. They've done that. Now the messaging has changed. My messaging has changed. By doing that, what we've done is we've set up an unrealistic expectation that every time you call for a bear, somebody's going to come. And that is unrealistic and it's not going to happen. So we do have some backtracking to do and some discussions to have. And basically, unless there is a threat to public safety, you guys aren't coming. But, you know, in that I'm working on a document. It's not ready yet, but I'll send it to you when it's done before I release it. And it's along these same lines. Going back to your comment, if you look at I wish I had the big map here, but can I get up? Would people see me? Like, are they like, you? It's like,
No, this is straight here.
right?
There's a sweet spot.
Stay on the side? Yeah. Okay. So if you look at where I'm assuming it was your brother who lives here.
Yeah.
So there are natural bear habitats right throughout this community that remain today. One of them is right here. You can see them. They're all green. And these are predominantly areas where there are lots of bear calls. 51st Street, 52nd Street, 53rd Street, 54th Avenue West. You've got the big plot of land here right beside JS Park. So all of these green areas are bear habitat. They don't know the difference.
Sure, you're right.
You know, there's a berry patch. It starts at our community trail, goes all the way down to just before Northern Lights College. The municipality has pulled out some now, which is great. But that berry patch also goes all the way across town. They're following that, right?
And I understand that. And I understand why the bear was in his backyard. But I have difficulty saying to him, in order to keep bears out of your yard, you got to cut that tree down. There's an expectation, I think, when people buy property and own it fee simple, that they can use their property the way they see fit to use their property within reason of a community. Everybody's patted this bylaw on their back. That bylaw says you can't feed a bear or a deer in your property. That means no garden. That means no berry bushes. That means no tree. That is an unenforceable bylaw. It's strong. You're absolutely right. It's strong, but nobody can comply with it. It needs to be changed so that it's realistic. I get the garbage. I get that. And I understand it. But we are not going to put 350 or 400 bear proof cans out there. It's not going to happen. And if we get rid of the 5% that you say, I say there's quite a few more than that, but the 5% of people that have their garbage, stored outside, or the 30% or whatever that are storing it in bins outside, if we get those put in, then what? The bears are still going to be here, and there's attractants. They're going to stay here.
But I mean, that's the point, is you reduce the attractants, the bear will linger through town and not get stopped or stuck or sidetracked by a tree, by garbage, by those, the things that are the high calls. The gardens, very few calls where gardens are the attractants, but I get you.
Because they're in the garbage.
I do see
When
your
the garbage is gone, the bears will be into something else. The bears will be into something else because they're about, you think changing the behaviors of bears is difficult. Try changing the behaviors of people.
Oh, I've been doing it for trying for 2 decades.
right? Try changing the behaviors of people. And so you're asking us to go out there and start putting huge fines on people for doing what other people can do in other communities around the province.
So provincially, attractants are dealt with provincially through the COS. The UBCM and like the municipality has brought bylaws in. They have chosen, Port Nelson chose when they brought the bylaw in that they were going to take responsibility and have a part to play in this. So that is where, you know, it's a great tool and it can be used with discretion. But if you guys were to bring in that consistent bylaw, no different than like that Tuesday and Thursday, twice a week, go out and do an attractant patrol, we would see a decrease in conflict. And again, those bears moving through this community is the end goal. There is, from what I have heard from the limited number of calls that I've dealt with from patrons in the community, is that people are scared of bears. The less bears and the less association, that would lead to a culture shift where, you know, bears are part of the community, but we don't have to live in fear of bears anymore. So, you know, that I hear that there is a fear and of just bears being in the community. And that is something that we do need to change. That, you know, that's a messaging thing. That is getting out on social and education, right? Education is the biggest part of that. But, you know, the enforcement and we've done the bin tagging. So now we're getting into, and from what both the Wild Safe and the COS presentation are saying is we need that enforcement arm to improve this situation. And this is a role, and this is something that, you know, it's the community, it's a service that's provided, and in town provided garbage cans as well. So that the town can control that aspect of it as well. But at the end of the day, you know, this is the residents of Fort Nelson are creating this attractant, and the Northern Rockies Regional Municipality has enacted a bylaw to control that. So that is something that, you know, NRRM has in the past signed on to be part of the solution. And that is what I'm hoping, whether it's a slight amendment to clarify where or like if that bylaw needs to be amended, then it needs to be amended, and that's fully within council's power. So if the wording is not delineated enough for what council wants, then that's within council's power. If you want to change the fine amount to go down in a fine amount by a bit, so that there's it's $100 off the first and then $150 if people aren't complying, that's within council's power. You folks in the room today, you know, I understand that you're hearing us, and I really appreciate that you're listening to us. But there are options, and I've been through. Part of my experience in Mackenzie is when we brought in those cans, we then brought in a bylaw, and I was part of bringing in that bylaw. And that's part of this working group here, is that by bringing in a couple members of the public, we can, you know, that working group brings together a very well-rounded set of perspectives in the community as well, with the same end goal. But, you know, the garbage, at the end of the day, the garbage is our number one, and we do need to regulate it. And, you know, the stats are not showing that bears are going for gardens. They aren't even really going for compost in the community. It's great that you also have a green waste disposal system or system in place. Clearly, that's, you know, the other aspect of that is those compost programs can also be a giant attractant if not managed correctly. So pat yourselves on the back for the way that that's administered as well. But yeah, the end goal here is public safety. Garbage throughout the province of British Columbia is the biggest attractant possible. It leads to the deaths of many bears. The deaths can be avoided, and that is part of. And we're also, you know, we have a multitude of different tasks to do, and that bringing in a bylaw person or a bylaw officer would be able to work with so many more bylaws in the community than just that attractant bylaw. So there's great monetary bang for your buck, or a great efficiency there as well.
Basically, you've got the tools, you've worked really, really hard, you spent a lot of money to get to where we are today. You're either happy or you're not. You know, that's a choice that mayor and council has to make. Because now you're at a, you're at a fork in the road. You're either gonna go this way or you're gonna go this way, and you're gonna need to have to decide soon which way that is that you're going to go. And, in the meantime, those of us out there will continue to do what most of us are very passionate, about. And, whatever council chooses is fine. Further, just to that is, part of that was having this community meeting, which I have been asking for since 2019. COVID kind of screwed that up for a couple of years, but there is no longer COVID. We are, we're sitting in in August. September is a very busy month for mayor and council. They've got the UBCM, they've got all kinds of other things going on. I would like to see that happen this year, whether it be, sometime in September or sometime in October. Just to, to get that community or those community members that wish to come. And as Lorraine alluded to, nobody knows what everybody's doing and what all of that means together. And that is, is a key piece. Maybe, and I know I've talked to people and they said, oh, I didn't know that. Oh, I didn't know that. The message isn't getting out there. We can keep trying, but I think, doing an information session where we're all there to answer their questions. We're there to listen to them, and maybe if they see all of the work that is being done, it may change a few minds. Maybe there will be more public buy-in, but at the end of the day, I have a role, the municipality has a role, CEOs have a role, and residents have a role. And if we're all not doing our roles, it's never going to work.
Yeah, well, okay. Now everybody wants to talk now. Go ahead, Council.
Just some final comments. I mean, obviously, we have an end goal and they have an end goal and the community has an end goal. And I think we're all working towards a solution, but I think there's other things that we could be doing. Councillor Souls had a great idea about creating an attractant outside of the community. And that's an idea that should grow and be explored. And there's also other ideas that we could do outside the box. So we're all kind of working within the box right now. There's other things that we could do. I mean, aside from having attractants, there's also detractants. There's probably some plant we can put in strategic areas that might help keep a bear from coming, through the trail and getting into the community. I don't know, but I think there are more solutions, more than just a status of our bear aware status on paper or a bylaw on a piece of paper. I think there's more proactive things that we could be doing. And I'm really looking forward to this working group to see some of those ideas. And I just hope that they don't, get suggested and then die. I hope that we can grab onto something and do something a little bit different. Because like you said, Mayor Foster, or Mayor Fraser, sorry. Sorry about that. Yeah, the statistics
now. Councilor Roper, it's been 8 months.
The stats are flatline. So, I mean, I think we're doing a lot of what we need to do, but I think there's definitely more that we can do as a community. So
There's no doubt about that. I'm worried about the risk. I don't think that equating the number of bears destroyed by the Conservation Officer Services as being low is any reflection of what the actual potential risk is out there. These are carnivores. These are wild animals. They're omnivores, if you want to call them omnivores, whatever. There is a potential for one of these bears to cause significant damage in the community. And, the premise of this coexistence is not something the majority of communities need to deal with in this province. And there's no reason we need to deal with it either. There are ways that we can deal with this and we need to think outside the box. But the root of this is not the attractant. The root of this is the bears are coming into our community. So how have you kept bears out of some of the other properties in this province? What did the province do with the hot springs?
So the COS, we enforce garbage. And what we're presenting to council and yourself, Mayor Fraser, today are techniques that have shown to improve the situation within the province of BC. Attractants do affect the number of bears that come into a community and also stick around in a community, and it affects the overall public safety of the community. So what we're presenting here today is the known risks and solutions to abate those risks. So, supplemental planting of attractants outside of the community, I'm not in a position to provide the realistic outcome of that. What I am here to provide, Mayor, is solutions that have worked in the other parts of the community and, or sorry, other parts of the province. And yeah, we use tickets, we have warnings, we have DWPOs, which are dangerous wildlife protection orders that force people, not force, they provide a time limit on opportunities for people. It gives people an opportunity to clean up their attractant or face a hefty fine under the Wildlife Act. But again, this is something that the NRRM has entered into, and councils from 2009 on have elected to have a part to play in this. And, at the end of the day, that is, that's why we're here, is to seek out whether and seek your support and to ultimately, if we can be partners together in this and have a common goal of dealing with the attractants in the community. So, that is, and that's also, I guess, the technique that's used under the Wildlife Act is we don't erect, we don't force people to erect fences. We don't force people to do anything. What the Wildlife Act requires is that you secure your attractants against dangerous wildlife on your property. And whether that's an apple tree, whether that's garbage, that's the solution that the province has endorsed, and then multiple other municipalities have endorsed within this province. And that's also what's, that's what's supported through the Wild Safe program, which the community is heavily invested in. And it would be, I really do hope that, that Wild Safe status, number one, brings a lot of reassurance to the community. It also is a great branding. This town this is a bear pit. This town identifies itself with bears whenever I come into the town, right?
It does, absolutely.
So if it's bear smart, if it's Wild Safe, it's a natural fit for a community like this, and it is achievable with the time, the effort, and the investment from council and from the staff. But yeah, the way that the BC government and under the Wildlife Act governs and deals with this public safety risk is through addressing attractants.
Fair enough. So thank you very much for the time and for the work that you do. Don't get me wrong. I think that the education part of what we're doing is appropriate. I do believe that there's a more root cause here that we need to do work on. And I think there's an awful lot of work that still needs to happen. I think the community is starting to become split with respect to the bears and this new idea to me of coexistence. So we'll see. For sure, we'll work with you to try to put together some type of a community meeting where the folks can come and give their input, and we'll try to do more. I guess that's probably the best way to end it. And try to do more. Thank you for your time. This meeting is adjourned.